Welcome to JDM Imported.
Datsun 510 Build Series. What's up, friends? Welcome back to the JDM Imported podcast, and welcome to episode 1 of, we'll do a 10 episode commitment build series. So as I mentioned last time around, I was going to start a build series, something a little different. I'm going to continue to track the business, continue to go over some live auctions, and also, I want to keep these things separate because there's a lot I want to talk about on the business side with what we have going on right now, shipping changes, all of that. But I wanted to separate that in the build for the shop car, the Datsun 510 SR20 DET swap. Want to keep that all separate because, some of you, including me, kind of enjoy an escape, I'm going to say Corona once, and that's it for this episode. So now it's done, and let's just have an escape. Let's talk about this build. I want to talk about future plans and also phase 1 that is now completed on the car, and same with the business layout. I want to talk about some things that are going well, some bad decisions, bad purchases, mess-ups, screw-ups, relationships, all of that stuff that really ties into like having a build, which I'm going to say, this is probably this is the most major build I've done myself as far as just amount of work, time, and research. I'm going to have to learn some new skills. This is what I would call a stretch build, something outside my skill level, which I enjoy. This same with the business side, with starting, the importing company, the detailing company. I kind of like to stretch myself and catch up to that, and then stretch a little more and catch up. My metaphor is a slinky, So you stretch one side, you let go of the other, it catches up, you stretch it again. So I like to kind of slink my way through life. For better or for worse, I think it puts me in a decent place as far as at least knowing enough to get into trouble for most things. And being able to have a conversation and knowing if someone's screwing you or not, knowing if things are done properly. So that's it. So stay tuned, obviously, for more business updates. That will be separate from this. This is the Datsun 510 Build Series. Hold on. It could be exciting. Or it could bore you to death. So let's get into it. Episode 1 of the Build Series. So let's start first. We're going to start on the sourcing of the vehicle, condition it was found in, and, we'll say phase 1. Since this is the first episode, I kind of want to give an overview of the goals of this car, hold myself accountable. I'm going to try to say the stuff out loud, and maybe it'll stick. Those of you that have been following me from the start know I'm big on that, but sometimes overreach and can't keep up with that deadline. But either way, I'm going to stick to it. That's my format. So the 510. Quick background on why I even wanted this car. Obviously, it's a Japanese classic car. I love the Datsun story, how they came to America, how they were poorly received, how they kind of rebranded, reinvented, and redefined what people at that time looked at a Japanese sports cars, and they were just such a different formula. And I think it kind of it changed maybe a perspective on some in the culture. Datsun did well. Once they got things adjusted, their marketing, their campaigning, their branding with the Z cars, the 510 did fairly well here. But really wasn't until it got kind of commercial success and celebrity success with, race series and Paul Newman, BRE. You guys know the whole story there. We don't need to get into that. But I've always kind of loved the story, how the company came here, and that's something we can talk about for another day. But I want to stick to the car. This is like, picture this series is like an Audible YouTube series, we all love to follow the time lapse of the big builds, and quick explanation, 30-second time lapse, that's kind of the cadence of these things. And I thought, I'll try something. I'm sure someone else is doing the same thing out there right now because there's a billion podcasts. But, I thought this would be kind of a nice way to follow a build in your mind, because we can all, if you're listening to this and at all interested, you have enough knowledge of cars that if I start explaining what's going on, you can picture it in your head. And sometimes, like with a book, I think we can have much more vivid imageries in our mind than what we engulf with our eyes. So we're gonna do that. So the car, I've liked them since high school, and on the premise of them being so ugly, they're beautiful. I'm like that with a lot of different cars. That's why I like the older JDM cars, because to most, they'll look at like an old VIP style car that's basically a brick of wood, carved out, and they don't see what some of us see. And I see beauty in some of the simplicity of the lines, some of the ingenuity of the body designs, because they didn't really go with what we had at the time, whatever period your Japanese car is. And that's something that's always been appealing. And at a young age, for some reason, not for some reason, I think it was a tuner magazine back in the day. It was like an old Super Street, and we're talking like 15 plus years ago. Probably 20 years ago. I'm 37. I've been in the car scene. Yeah. Shoo. Anyway, yeah, so it's been a while, but I've, it's not kind of a, hey, I need to get something for the shop. I want to get something that's, because, it's not very different, but you still don't see many of them around. I want to get a classic. This has been something I've actually always wanted. This wasn't spur of the moment whatsoever, although I haven't been looking for years. But it's a build I've always wanted to do, which is essentially, resto mod of this chassis. So, and I wanted the sedan, and let's be clear, because it is confusing. It's confusing even to me. There is two versions of two-door 510s. There is the sedan two-door, and there is the coupe. There is also the four-door sedan or saloon. So this is, the roofline's a little bit different on the coupe. To be honest with you, I like it better, but they are just hyper rare. So, and my main thing was when I thought to myself, this is a terrible time to get into a project, so let's go for it. And when I started sourcing, my main goal, I definitely wanted a two-door, but it was, I wanted it in a certain state, and that was non-restored, but not molested, pretty much stripped down. So, I came to this conclusion that I wanted this build, and again, it's the worst timing. It never is good timing for this with the business, continuing to, I'm still in startup mode to growing that in Pittsburgh here, now with a hefty cut in revenue and just time, as far as my bookings and things like that. So things have really dropped off. So now is probably not the time for this project, even though I have more time to work on it. That's the whole dichotomy of the whole situation. But I thought it was very necessary. I know I've mentioned this in the past, but I thought it was very necessary for me to have this type of car again. Because this is my love. This is my passion, is really building the cars, being around them, being in the scene, putting shows on, cruises, all of that. Like I love it. And it's really, for someone in my position with my type of business, to not have that type of vehicle, that vessel that kind of incorporates me in the culture, it wasn't jiving. It was weird. And, I'd still go to these events and you'd still network and, you have friends and whatnot, but with the Honda Ridgeline, and if I don't have anything that I'm importing right now, right-hand drive that's cool to drive, it just, I don't know. It just, to me, it seemed like I was lacking sincerity, even though I knew it was there. The optics of it all would be that, So, yeah, I mean, I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this really for business marketing, but this is something that I've always wanted to do. So this was kind of the segue and the gateway to the whole drug of it all is I'm like, well, it's a business expense and yeah, it's marketing. So that's how I can validate, at least in my own mind. So I started looking around, and it took like 2 weeks to find the car. I mean, it did. It kind of fell in my lap. I mean, it wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't like a barn find or, a connection through a third cousin. It was Facebook Marketplace. I took a chance. I saw, I was just scrolling through. I see a picture of a 510 chassis. Stripped down, nothing on it. And I was like, ooh, okay. If we have like some parts there, this is what I was looking for. Not the car that's like, oh, it's in okay original condition, or it's in nice original condition, original paint, there's some rust showing through, things like that, but I would still have to then strip all of the parts off, which that's not a ton of work. What's the work is once you start sanding the paint away, stripping the layers of years of body work and damage and rust repair, that's when you get surprised. And for me, I'd rather have a clean, torn down chassis that has been media blasted, that I can see all the holes. I can see where it rusted through, all the Bondo's stripped away. Yeah, some panels are dented, uneven, but I know 100% at least where the body stands. And that's what I found. So I knew this was probably not the most conducive to my situation because I have to really think about time. And getting a car like that is really... I'm building this from the ground up. It is a chassis, boxes of parts, not a nut or bolt on it. But, so I found it on Facebook Marketplace, talked to the guy for a little while, and he was, an hour and a half away, so I figured, why not? There's not many clean chassis like that. There's a lot that have been modded up, covered up. You don't know what you're getting into. And this was a clean strip chassis. So, it was just an abandoned project from like 2015. But when they got it, they stripped it, media blasted it, and immediately covered it, inside, outside, underside in epoxy primer. Then the underside was actually covered in that black, rust not the encapsulator, but sealant. I forget what this stuff's called. P something or other. You know what I'm talking about. I'm sure some people are yelling at their phone right now. But so the underside's covered in that. Inside, outside was really well done in just an epoxy primer. So the fact that that work was done and that it's been sitting for years, so I could see kind of the job that was done on the prep, because since 2015, if it's been sitting around not moving, if somebody shortcutted the prep or the blasting or the priming on the chassis, that would start to show through. You'd start to see some bubbling. You'd start to see some rust and surface rust appearing if it wasn't coated. Most of that stuff will start showing its ugly face, and it didn't. It was not given. There's a lot of holes in that, Bottom of the fenders blown out, Some of the mounting points in the top part of the fenders blown out. Inside of the rear fender well blown out. But I can see it. I can see the inside, the outside, and that's where it is, and that's where it stayed for years like that. So we're talking patch panels. I'm going to do everything right because the body, even though this is going to be used for track purposes, the body needs to be right because it's, this is kind of showing off my brand, who I am, and the type of cars I like to deal with as far as the attention to detail, for the detailing side, for bringing the cars in from an importing standpoint. This is how I can finish a car for somebody should they want that. So it needs to be... Personally, I just want this thing to be a track hog. It's a tool. It's a tool like any of the other cars I've built, and anyone that's had a car on track can attest to this. Whether it's your baby or not, as soon as it's on that track, it's a tool. Stop worrying about the stone chips. Stop worrying about the stress cracks. It just turns into a tool. So that's kind of where I'm coming from firstly, but I know that it needs to make a presentation because this is a dual duty car, has to promote the business. So I talked to the guy, look at it. It's pretty much what it seems. It's a few more holes and definitely some more body work than I thought. But either way, it was good enough. I was already there. So, and it came with an SR20. motor and tranny. So I originally wanted to do, and I know might be sacrilegious to some, but really wanted to do a rotary swap in it, a 13B. But it's, with all the support out there and then my knowledge of just being around SR20s, it seemed like a no-brainer. I'm going to be spending enough time, getting the bodywork straight, suspension, the tuning. It's, let's work with something that we know what we're getting. So strip chassis, motor and tranny came with it, and a box of original parts. I mean, original dash, gauges, basically everything for it. Given whenever somebody says it's just about all there, it's like 80% there, so yeah, it has the motor, but none of the stuff for the swap. Like some wires were switched over, but harness work, mounts, tranny motor mounts, rad intercooler piping, exhaust, turbo housing, because you're going to need to relocate it. The turbo is blown. So it's like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of there from a basic standpoint, but, and then on top of that, yeah, there's bags of nuts and bolts. And I mean, pro tip, if anyone's looking to do this, any kind of restoration, it's just spend your money on fasteners. It's been said before. I will say it again. Spend your money on fasteners, because getting those boxes, unless they are meticulously labeled and cleaned up and refinished and put in parts cleaners or media rollers, whatever, it's just a nightmare. Because if you can find the bolts, they're in horrible condition. They all need some love, unless you want to put back together for all that work just a bunch of rusty, dusty looking parts, which I don't. And for the amount of time to figure out what goes where, regardless of the manuals you have, the diagram blowouts, all of that stuff, man, I found a list of every nut and bolt on that car. And I just went down, so I ordered like a general packet of all the smaller, like M6, M8, M10, M12, bunch of different lengths, flange nuts, all zinc coated, for like all the accessories and stuff like that, which I'm probably going to use a third of all those, but whatever. I got a box, so no matter what, I have more than enough to bolt fenders on, accessories under the hood, in the car, so we're good there. Those are all new. And then for suspension stuff, I found a list online, and I just went, it was a spreadsheet, and I basically went from the front to the back of the car for as far as suspension and steering, and I just went through. I found, actually, you know what? If you're interested, where is it? Yeah, there was two websites. There was Bolt Depot and Fastenel.com, which is actually local to me, and I use them for most everything because it was just the simplest interface. I could type in, M12, 1.25 pitch, 90 mil long, 17 millimeter hex head, boom. Here's 3 different finishes. Choose your bolts. I mean, so I just went front to back, all suspension components, diff mount, subframe, cross member, and just ordered all of those. And yeah, it's not cheap, but it's not awful if you don't go crazy on like all stainless stuff. You get the zinc coated stuff, grade 8. It's all you need. Good to go. You get the flange nuts where you need them, the lock nuts where you need them. But yeah, you get that printout online, and I mean, you can find it for any car. And I mean, it took an hour and a half, which really isn't that bad. I mean, the time flies by. I just kind of go list by list. I type it in. I need 4 of those. Boom. Type it in. 2 of those. Boom. And I have a whole set of all my, at least chassis component hardware coming in. And it's all new. None of it's going to be stripped. None of it's going to be seized, stripped, rounded, mismatched. It's all going to make sense. And that's, and to me, not only the fact that everything's going to be new and it's going to save time on like restoring hardware, it's just how much time it's going to save in frustration of like when I'm holding a piece and I just need to put something through it and I got to look through a bunch of Ziploc bags. Like, it was nice the guy made an effort, but again, unless you're cataloging and you are meticulous about it, it's pointless, because even those of you that have taken a bell housing off a car, and there might be 8 bell housing bolts, there might be 3 different versions of that. So then it's feeling, and yeah, I mean, a little trial and error. You get the right ones in the right places. You can only fit them so many ways, but how nice is it if you actually have things labeled or a diagram and it's like, boom, the short one here, the tall one there, the skinny one there, the fat one there, and you just roll through. So when you're holding things in awkward positions, you can just rock it, and no back and forth and then getting a different socket to match. I mean, all of those like 10, 30 second, departures from the work really adds up. And that's where I'm at right now. I mean, for those of us that have full-time jobs, or you have a business, or you have a family, even if you have one of those, you need to maximize these projects because really, as we all know this that have been through it, they can get out of hand. And the 3-month project could easily turn into the 9-month. That can turn into the couple years. And then you lose interest, right? Because once the progression stops, at least with me, I started losing interest. When the end of the tunnel just isn't even in sight and you're just in a black hole and you just keep working on things and tinkering with things and you fix one and 2 other things pop up that you didn't know about. It's disheartening. That's why these projects don't take guys 5 years to finish of actual work. That's just 5 years to get over the mental barriers, and stress it causes. I mean, it's not easy. Why we do it, I still don't know. Passion, love, nonsense, an excuse. That doesn't even add up. I don't know why we do it. But I'm like, I am so excited about this car. And every 30 minutes that I can just squeeze in to do something little on, I'm doing it. So that's where the car is at. So, I got it back home, started sorting through the boxes, found out obviously that, like I said, a lot of hardware and things. I mean, I just ended up throwing a lot of the nuts and bolts away because, once I saw the condition, I'm like, I'm getting all new stuff. I don't even want to deal with this. Like, it's not even worth the half a day it's going to take to catalog what's there. And same with the interior. So most of the interior stuff's there, but, there's no carpet. The seats, I'm not using the seats. I mean, they're like bucket seats, but they're bucket seats that are benches. I'm just going to fly out the window if I have those. So, so I'm not using the seats. The back seat's not going to be in there. It's going to be delete. I want to finish everything nicely with some sheet metal, do some beading work and stuff of that nature. Just add some strength just to make it a little more decorative. Again, going for that, I'm going to have kind of like how I like to do a lot of things, with furniture I make, take older heritage, incorporate some modern stuff. So like with the gauges, to get the gauges to work, it's a lot of work to get those factory ones. They were in great condition, so I sold them. I'm going to do a digital display, but I want to keep the original dash because I have it and they're so hard to come by. And if they're decent shape, they're like $1,000 for the basic 510 dash. So I want to keep that in there, but digital display, taking out the radio, but keeping the same kind of DIN layout to put like the all the switches in there. And once I start going through, and it's been morphing as we've been going already, and we're just ramping up. I've only had it for six or 7 weeks, but once I started looking at the wiring, it's actually in decent shape. But again, when we're like 40 plus old wiring, I want all new, simple, like new modern relays and switches. I mean, to me, there's no benefit to try to restore or keep that stuff for what I want to use it for, but so I'm going to, simplify, do some painless wiring basically. I mean, it's going to be toggle switches and the basics, heater core, which I'm going to keep. The factory one's there. It works. I might keep it. I might do like a hot rod setup, but I definitely want to have at least heat just for defrost purposes. Because in Pittsburgh here, if there's like a fall track day, not even for my comfort, I mean, just fogging, or if it's kind of a rainy day, I need to have heat and defrost. Obviously, vents in the AC, gone. Power steering, gone. Power brakes, no. So it's going to be as basic as it can be, from that standpoint. I just wanted, I've always wanted the 510. I've always wanted it for, just the fact that it can be an analog car, but I can have a somewhat modern turbo engine in it just is so, it's going to be so satisfying, right? So yeah, that's kind of how the body's going to go. We're metalworking as much as I can, just cutting out all of the panels that need patching them with the factory. I think it's 20 gauge. I'll have to double check. Almost positive there. So I'm going to get the body done there. Next, I'm going to move on to the interior. So this is where we're at now. And again, all the interior except for the carpet was there, but when I see like the pedals and the pedal box, they're in rough shape. You need new springs and just like little tiny things that I feel like are just going to take a long time to source. Stuff like that would drive me nuts. That if the engine's crisp, everything's running good, and the gas pedal's stiff or it's creaking, or every time I push down the clutch pedal, the return spring gets rust all over my socks. Or if it's going to look clean, I want to clean from inside out, from the heart out. So, bucket seats, went with the Momo race seats, both for the front there, the XL and the traditional sizing for, they're the Super Cups. So the Momo Super Cups, 2 of those, and I got some pedals. Not floor mounted though, so race pedals, because I really wanted the engine bay to be clean. So my goal for this is, again, it's very duty focused on the track, but when I take it to the car show and I show them the paintwork, that I spent tons of time leveling, polishing, put some PPF film on it, and the engine bay, very purpose built, but shaved, smooth, tucked. Just the stuff that it's going to take some extra time, but it's what I've always wanted, and I think would just kind of, again, show who I am to people that just want to get to know me, people that want to work with me from a business standpoint, and just to make it a little more mine. I can put this together much quicker if I just put the engine in how it stands, and bolted up as many stock things as I could, and just mismatch some hardware, and one seat here, stock seat there. That's not what I want to do. So this is going to be a 10-part series. We'll see how long this is. My original goal for this was the end of July. That's going to be a huge stretch. The reason it was an end of July goal is the Pittsburgh Vintage Grand Prix. I wanted to have it there. And I actually wanted to run it there. So with how things are going now, I don't know if the Grand Prix is going to be going on this year. There hasn't been any official contact on that. And also, even though work slowed down, I haven't had the time, because I have to be, the kids aren't in school. School's closed. So I have to be home more. So it's not... like if I was at work and in between detailing appointments, I had like a 2-hour window, hang there. I used to wrench on the FC. I could wrench on the 510, but that's not the case anymore. I need to bounce home. I need to be here as much as I can. So it's going to be tricky from that standpoint, but I'd at least like it to be presentable by then, running and some paint on it. Maybe if I have to do some, corner balancing, some stuff with the fuel system, some tuning, it'll take a while to dial in the alignments I want, and, the steering, because that whole steering system there, since it's not a steering rack, it's not a rack and pinions, kind of foreign to me. It's some new stuff I have to get used to as far as the geometry and how that's going to bump steer is, and the Ackerman and all that stuff. So there's going to be a learning curve for that, but at least, running, driving, taking it to shows, cruises, whatever, that's the goal, and I'm just going to say this summer. So it should go fast for you guys, hopefully following along. But yeah, so the interior, the buckets, race pedals, all aluminum set with and really the other reason I wanted it is the engine bay. You have master cylinder, 2 brake master cylinders, and a master cylinder for the clutch. So that's 3 reservoirs tucked right behind where the turbo is going to be. So then I'm going to have to put up a partition there, obviously, to help mitigate the heat. And it's just going to be kind of busy there, again, because it's a motor for a right-hand drive car. Hence, that's why, it's not the main reason why, but it's a better layout for a right-hand drive because you have all the steering and the reservoirs on the left side of the car. You have the turbo on the right. Well, now everything would be on the right, which is just too congested. And it's a congested engine bay with that motor anyways. So I'm going to set it back as far as I can. I got some McKinney Racing motor mounts, and I can actually adjust them back a little bit since I'm not going to be running all the coolant hoses and things like that behind the engine block. I'm just going to run 2 straight into the cabin for the heater core, and that's it. I'll be able to get the motor back far. It's give me a little more space in the front for the rad, for the intercooler. That's going to be busy up there. And then once I saw like restoring the pedal box and getting all that stuff working, and it's still going to be old, crusty, and dusty, thought I'd get with the race set. So I got the is it OBP set from Vivid Racing, since I have a wholesale account with them. So, and it's a really nice unit. So it's all 3 pedals, billet aluminum, brake bias, and it's mechanical brake bias with a remote control for that. So it's just a knob that you can that mechanically, between the 2 master cylinders for the front and rear brakes, it'll mechanically kind of slide this link to apply a little more pressure to the front, a little more to the back. So I love that it has that mechanical brake bias feature that I can do from the cockpit on the fly. And it's simplicity. You can adjust where the pedals are, get them close to each other, work around the steering column and all that stuff. And and the main thing is master cylinders are all in the cockpit. Nothing in the engine bay. And when I say nothing, since the cylinders are in there, think about that. No lines need to be in the engine bay either. The lines will simply, bulkhead fitting going into the wheel well for the front, both front wheels. And then they can go down either in through the cabin or, down and under the car like they would traditionally. 2 more bulkhead fittings and down under the car. So no lines, no reservoirs and master cylinders in the engine bay. Huge difference. That's going to clean up. Not that I even need that room. I mean, maybe I can put a catch can there or something, but it's just going to be, since the turbo needs to be a top mount to clear for the factory steering box and the linkage is there, it'll free up all that room. It'll basically just be turbo there, downpipe, and then just kind of a crater in the corner of nothing, which I want. And all the little tabs for all the lines that go all along the back firewall, boom, done. Get them out of here. Battery tray, out of here. Batteries in the back. So, and I'm not going for like, Pebble Beach type stuff, SEMA stuff where it's like fully shaved where I'm going to spend like 100 hours bondoing seams and, crazy wire work. You're still going to see some harness. You're still going to see some coolant hoses. You're still going to see fuel lines, but that's it. Like, I just want this like easy to look at. So when you open the hood, it's not just this like blob of just all this like, all this like evap system and emissions controls and like all this stuff jammed into this like classic car. Like, I want it to kind of look like a classic motor did, because when you looked at those L series motors that came in them, they're like, yeah, there was a lot of space to work around them. And even though this is going to be bigger and a little more bulky with a turbo and intercooler and things like that, I want the sides to be nice and clean. You can get some hands in there, get some wrenches, some critters can get in there, but just all kind of nice space around to see the SR20. So, and since we're in the engine bay, let's talk a little more about the motor. So it's the standard condition, right? Standard condition import motor that, and I'm throwing up the air quotes, between 40 and 60,000 kilometers for whatever that's worth, because who actually verifies that? Some do, most don't. Came out of a running car, awesome. All I know is the turbo, the shaft play was like probably an 1/8 an inch movement either way, totally shot. Oil throughout the intake tube. So turbo's gone, whatever. I figured there'd be at least a rebuild there, and with those T25s, T28s, by the time you rebuild them, my thing is, and what I'm going to do is, you get not the cheapest, but kind of a good quality knockoff. If you want to do a stock setup, which I do to start with, because who cares? If it's good for a year or so until I upgrade everything, get a nice ball bearing, something like that, then great. But it's not, by the time you rebuild, or if you buy a used one that might be need rebuild anyway, I'd rather start with, even if it's not the best quality, but at least something new. It doesn't need to last forever. I'm not going to be putting 20,000 miles on it. I'm going to be doing stock boosts. So top mount manifold for clearance, and just got an ISR turbo T28 bolt on. Keeping it clean and simple. Simple downpipe setup, bung for the O2, call it a day. No divorce wastegate or anything like that. Running stock boost pressure, at least for now. And so I start tearing down the engine, and so I'm in this mindset, right? So guys, I'm like, I'm going to rebuild a car from scratch. What did I get myself into? And then I'm like, well, the car's stripped down. I'm going to strip down the engine, because I've never actually fully stripped down. And when I say fully, naked block, nothing on it at all. Not just accessories, we're just nothing. Oil squirters, everything. Naked block. Never done it before. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take this time to really learn this engine from the inside out, and really let me inspect it. So I start taking it apart. There's obviously it looks like it sat forever. A lot of just hard carbon deposits. But nothing looked bad. There wasn't any scoring, but I'm like, once I get into it, since I'm going to be, it's not going to be getting driven a lot. And when it does, it's going to be mostly high RPM track stuff. So I'm like, yeah, let me do the rod bearings, and at least I can inspect those, inspect the piston rings, stuff like that. And everything looked on the block good. There was some pitting, around the top of the cylinders, but nothing major, nothing that showed lifted head where you got a lot of steam and high temperature in there. The head gasket was actually in pretty good shape, and compression numbers were decent on it too. So it's kind of middle of the range healthy. But if I was doing bearings and want to upgrade the hardware, ARP hardware, stuff like that, I'm like, just strip it down. Let's strip it down. Let's clean it out. So I'll start stripping it down, taking it apart. I'm like, I'm going to clean it myself. It's kind of a pain, right? And you what tools do I use? It's an aluminum block. If I'm trying to get this gasket material off with this stuff that everyone says is an abrasive disc, but it won't mess it up. It just feels like it feels like it's putting texture in where I shouldn't be putting texture in. And I'm like, plus I just wanted to, you don't know the life of it. So I'm like, I want someone to properly, deck the block, which for those of you that don't know, basically making sure the block is dead level, because I want to do a metal head gasket and just not worry about it. And you can't, metal head gasket on anything that's not perfect. So I wanted someone to look at that and also look at the valve guides and seals. And so took it all apart, took it to a awesome engine builder that, if you were going to have an engine built by this guy, a year wait list. But for something like this, it's a week. They just kind of put it in whenever. So, and again, it's first time going through at this depth, so I wanted to have the engine just properly cleaned, and looking new. Because originally I was going to paint it, and I'm like, you know what? It'd be kind of nice just to throw an enamel clear on it and have it just look like a virgin fresh SR, to kind of go with the theme of the rest of the car, where all the bolts and nuts are fresh, all the brackets have been cleaned up or painted. I just thought it made sense. But that's where the rabbit hole begins, my friends. So I take the block apart, take it to the place, look it over, buddy. Sweet. Look over the head. Cool. Start schooling me on this is a bunch of engine stuff that I knew a little bit about, but as far as honing and boring and the different types of hones, and showing me the difference between a factory hone and some of the stuff that he does, which is kind of deeper, which essentially this is the grooves, purposefully installed grooves on the cylinder walls that'll help retain some oil for some lubrication for the rings, and it's kind of this it's this dance, right? Manufacturers, he actually showed me the Subaru block that was a brand new block, and he rehoned everything because manufacturers will put in more vertical lines. I mean, they're still at an angle, but they're a little more vertical, and they're not as deep. Reason being, that helps emissions, that helps efficiency, because it's it's better for the engine, especially performance engine, if you have the deep grooves in your hone, because you'll have a better seal. The pistons, the rings, everything's a little happier. And what he was telling me, kind of a really nice byproduct, is that it helps so much with cooling from the inside out. Because if you're increasing combustion, you're decreasing friction. It's kind of a win-win. The only negative is, you might burn a little more oil, as you do with like performance cars, and that affects emissions. So that's why these factory motors, they go very light on those things, because it'll just make for a cleaner car. Now, it might run a lot hotter, but again, it's not meant to be run at high RPMs and temperatures all the time. They figure 99% of the population is like hitting red line every once in a while for like a little bit, and that's fine. So, but he builds purpose-built motors, so it needed it. The cylinder walls were okay, but they did need a bit of a bore to square them up to get everything perfect. And the rings, the rings all needed replaced. They were loose because, again, it held combustion. But as he showed me, once you start moving the rings, a lot of what helped that combustion was the old deposits. That's right. Like, the old deposits were helping increase the combustion, which, composites aren't permanent. They could flake off, and then you get a little more stuff in your engine, clogs things up, maybe your injectors, who knows. But, and then all of a sudden you can have like a great drop off in compression, and it's like nothing failed. It just, maybe it was, especially for motors that sat for a while, maybe it was kind of fake compression numbers, because it was the deposits, the carbon deposits, that were really, keeping the rings from floating around too much. So, once he cleaned them up, everything looked sloppy, so he's like, we should do new rings. And if we're going to do that, let's bore it out over so we could do a fresh hone and really get everything. And he wasn't selling me on stuff. It was just like, this was the right way to do it. And if everything's going to be torn down and I want a reliable engine, like, that's what we're going to do. So, and it was great. I learned so much from going through that process and taking time to learn. He took time to explain, and now I have, like, that's just one less thing I have to worry about, because now the block, totally decked, top of it flat, looks gorgeous. Whole block is perfectly clean, looks brand new, and it was rough looking before, brand new looking. And then most importantly, board 10 over, everything's clean and fresh. I ended up getting new pistons to match that bore, Wiseco, billet aluminum ones. The rods I kept the same, since it's really not a failing point for those unless you're really pushing high boost, which I'm never going to be. It's a 2,000-pound car. Like, what do I need to do with that? But yeah, all new hardware that came with that. Rings, the ARP hardware for the rods, and man, it just, those pistons, gorgeous. You've probably seen a while ago, I posted some on my social. It's just, I was sniffing them. I take them out and just look at them. They're glorious. It's a shame I have to bury them deep in that engine, but so it's and it'll be factory compression. Didn't change that. Obviously the displacement went up a smidge, but it's not like doing a stroke or anything. It's just the amount of 10 over to clean up the material and do a fresh hone. But it's going to be sealed up so nice. And I just know, now that I went in and I inspected all the journal the crank bearings, the rod bearings, there was, on some of them there was copper showing. So they're in the end of the thrust bearings definitely look rough. Things were getting towards their end of life. Like, would it blow in the next year? Nah, maybe not. Maybe I'd put a lot of work into it and it would last for 3 years, but it's just, things needed, like, if you were in there, any mechanic would have said, these things needed replaced, even if the motor's working okay. Because just like we learned, or like I learned, that sometimes you get fake compression numbers because it could just be, deposits that are aiding and such, or like if there's a thick layer of deposits on the top of pistons and the rings are sealing enough, that kind of increases your compression, right? But it's getting increased by dirt, which made me feel a little skeevy. But and that can change once your car gets really hot, or maybe it's never been run as hard as I'm going to run it, never saw those temperatures before. So, I'm glad I did it. It's just for the peace of mind. And now all the bearings are fresh. Everything's still apart right now. So now I have to get into the final assembly, which I'll keep you guys posted of that, to get the whole bottom end put in. So I want to do the bottom end, the heads, and the head got cleaned out. That got decked as well. So we have a nice mating surface, and then just new valve seals. And then all the valve, it was, leak down tested. Everything was sealing up good. Not perfect, but good, like good enough. I mean, really, you could do a valve job on it, but I mean, let's draw the line somewhere. I mean, this went from like a cheap cleaning and decking to like, a bore and a hone and a bunch of other stuff. So, and the pistons. But I'm glad I did. I think it's money well spent. So all that stuff's going to be fresh, Can't wait to put it back in. Order new fuel pump, and obviously I have a new OEM gasket kick for everything. So all the gaskets are going to be new. All the major hardware. I'm going to reuse some hardware for some accessories and stuff like that on the side of the engine. Because I mean, again, you got to stop somewhere. I mean, I don't need new hardware for the intake manifold. Like, it's fine, but all new gaskets with all that stuff. So I just don't have to worry. And then of course, there are some lines that came with the car. I'm not going to try to adapt those. Just all new fuel lines, all new brake lines. Plus, it's something I've always kind of wanted to do. And it's just, with me, I think my focus with this, because I'm a little older, is kind of the peace of mind mods. Now, I could push a lot of those aside. It would probably make more work, but if I was in that, kind of money saving mode, I'd be like, well, I can push those aside. It'll take up a lot of my time, but I can upgrade the turbo now. But I can get a standalone now. And that's just not where I'm at. Like, my time is super valuable now, so I'd rather mitigate that and maximize peace of mind and reliability. Because once things are running, like, I'll get used to it a year or so later, then okay, we'll work on the valve train, upgrade the camshafts and springs and retainers and standalone and maybe a little bigger turbo and just, have it like a reliable, like low 300 horsepower, and that, which would be stupid fast for that thing. But, I want to get it all tuned right now. It'll still be crazy fast, but at least get, the traction, the suspension, all that stuff sorted, and it might be fine how it is. And I might be like, listen, this is how I want to run it. There's no need for me to get more power. It's just going to be too hard to get traction, or who knows what might be the issue. So I mean, really, that's the goal of it. So, and the rest, so that's where I stand now. So the car is still, my goal now, by next time we talk, it'll be a roller. So my goal now is just to get all the suspension, and nothing's going to be final torque because it's all going to be taken apart again. But my goal right now is just to make it a roller, so I can get it. It's at a friend's storage facility now. I want to get it to the shop so I can start on the body work and start fitting the engine in and all that stuff. And really, there's going to be a lot of work on driver position, because now I've totally changed the pedal box out. I'm 6'4". I want to sit back far. I want the steering wheel to be in my lap. So I'm trying to get my body back as much as possible. So the pedals will be closer to me, steering wheel further away from the firewall, engine back. And then, of course, it's all there, buddy. Well, it didn't have a gas tank. So, I mean, I'm kind of glad because it means I get to get a fuel cell. But, so now I need to fit a fuel cell in, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to do that, and again, the most cost effective. I mean, do I want to get like an all-out ATL cell with a in-tank surge, dual pumps? And that'd be great, but man, they're too much dough. At least right now, I don't need it. So, maybe just a billet aluminum, something that I can keep internal in the trunk, so a lot of sanctions will be okay with that. If it's dropped down, then all of a sudden you need one of the expensive ones, that are FIA approved, bladder, all that stuff. But, I think at least with track days and some stuff like that, I can get away for now with the, with the aluminum tank in the trunk. I'll move it back. It'll probably be over like where the, right now the stock tank's right in between the struts in the back, strut towers. So this way the whole tank's going to be behind that. Again, moving the weight back, plenty of space for crash and stuff. I'll have to put some supports in. I'll build a little cage around it, but it'll just be sitting up there in the trunk. and probably do a small surge tank, just because I won't be getting like the crazy expensive fuel cells, so it'll just have some foam in it to help with aeration and sloshing. But in all reality, I'd probably need a surge anyway, like a 1.5 liter surge. So yeah, and that'll be the trunk. Battery back there, surge tank, fuel cell. And then I still want to finish it. I don't want any holes there, so just some paneling. Nothing that's like adding crazy weight or anything. I'm no rhino liner. I just want to put some nice panels in, cover up the wheel wells, and a nice flat panel on the floor where everything's going to bolt to, and call it a day. Because really, it's kind of a shame. Like, I'll get over this, but I'm sure someday I'll be okay cutting up the trunk. But right now, it's like, that's usually, especially where the spare tire goes, those things are rotted out. And this is like, it's probably the best area of metal in the whole car is the trunk. It's amazing. I mean, there's no pitting or anything. So I'm not going to cut that out yet. So the fuel cell will sit on top. For weight transfer, it'd be better to get it lower. But again, I'm spending time in different areas. And it's like, if I don't need that now, that's a winter project down the road. Next year, the year after, winter project down the road, okay, let's extend a cage back there, drop it down low, get the nice cell, But for now, I think that'll be a good solution. It'll kind of stick with the whole resto mod. It'll be performance, but it'll still, look like a trunk just with a gas tank in it. A nice one. Nice, shine it up. Maybe it'll be black aluminum, I don't know. But something kind of cool. But yeah, so that's really going to be overall how it looks. So anyone has some lines on 15-inch wheels, SSR Mark IIIs or Shark Stars, I would love to find. I don't really care about the offset. It just needs to be a 4x114, and I can fix the barrels out. But that's my next thing is I'm trying to source some wheels. I have 2.5 and a 3.5 inch metal flares. They're going to be installed. So I'm going to put those on first. After it's a roller, probably the flares will be first, or I'm going to do those in order with, the patch panels, and then do some measuring so I can, I'd like to custom build some wheels. If not, though, again, if it's not in the cards, I'm not going to sweat it. But, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I think that'll be the good progression. But that's the picture, and that's where we're at now. So amassing parts, all the little stuff, just little, like I said, hardware, trans mount for the 510 to SR20 swap, motor mounts. What else did I get? I have it's all kind of random stuff, and it just keeps popping up. I'm gonna have to have a bunch of lines and fittings, to 6AN to hard lines and all that stuff. So fuel pressure regulator, the plumbing's going to take a while. I think the plumbing, and even though the electrical is going to be very simple, a very simple harness, I still think it's going to take a minute. Just because that's not my forte, and I want to do it myself. And I want to do it right. I want to have a nice clean board with relays, fuses, in cabin, easy to access, easy to troubleshoot, and only wires run to stuff that's working. Nothing else. I don't want any of that old stuff in there. And that's why I want to do the nice CAN digital gauge, with CAN bus communication. So just real simple, one thick cord into the back, going out to kind of a motherboard for all the accessories or all the sensors for the gauges. And yeah, just keep it simple, man. I'm excited. I hope, please send me some messages here and there just to check in, just to ask, to keep me motivated, because it's trying right now. Like I said, I'm trying to keep the business going here and trying to book things when I can. Since things have slowed down, and trying to be home as much as possible, and I don't want to lose momentum on this, because it's important that it's important for my sanity. It's important for the business. I think that this car doesn't miss the car season, this summer, the show season. It's important. So yeah, if you're curious, if you're thinking of something, if you know something about something, the SRs, 510 swaps, you've been around there, good sources for, for used parts, used racing parts, wheels, I have a vendor relationship with Vivid Racing now and Juku Racing, Tire Rack. So it's like, I have access to all those and can get decent, but it's hard finding really the only one-piece wheels that I can find that I can get in the right offset and bolt pattern. It's like T37s. And even wholesale, they're super expensive for 15s. I mean, let's be real. I don't want to be sweating, going off track with those, even though that's what they're made for. I know. But, if you're spending that much for wheels, ugh. Plus I don't know, there's something about a modern fitment with a classic, JDM wheel. That's why I like the SSR Mark IIIs. I can paint them. And I'm thinking, let me know what you think about this. I'm thinking I'm going to do a red and gold theme. So red exterior, engine bay, and then probably whole color change. I think just to keep it simple, red everything inside and out, and then cage, wheels, braces, kind of accent in a vintage metallic gold. I think that's the way I want to take it, And the only variation might be bronze. So it might be the red theme with bronze everything, depending on, again, the wheel situation. If I'm going to refinish some, or if I am just going to end up buying some new wheels, some Graham lights or something like that I'm, I don't want to refinish new ones. And finding used ones, like I said, at the right size and offset it's not impossible, but it's just, I could spend hours a day trying to source these things and come up empty, and I just don't want to do that. So, yeah, if you got any leads, let me know. But anyways, yeah, let's keep some dialogue going, guys. I think this build series will be fun. Let me know what you think. I'm going to try to separate it categorically, just so you can look in the title, and if it's, if you're focused and you're like, man, I can't wait for the build episode, you're gonna know, you're not gonna be blindsided thinking it's gonna be me talking about, JDM cars, JDM car market, the business, and all this stuff, and then you get me talking about, how I'm installing my seats that week. And how I'm learning fabrication stuff, which I think that'll probably be a lot of talk from the next episode. Is ordered some tools, some things that I haven't used much or at all, to kind of make the patchwork cleaner and proper, So I'm going to talk about that, going down that hole of fabricating, making some bracketry, some metalwork, some welding, because again, there's going to be some fiberglass and Bondo on this. It's inevitable, I'm not just going to lead fill it and stuff like that, but let's keep it as minimal as possible, minimal as possible. Just finished work. That's what I want to keep it to. I want all the meat and potatoes to be magnetic, So, yeah. So that's what to expect. 10 episodes. This is number 1 in the books. Maybe I'll have to come up with a cool name for it. Haven't given it much thought yet, but yeah, this is going to be the Elusive Auto 510 SR build. Stay tuned. As always, you can reach me at Dante, elusiveautoco.com, at elusiveautoco, or at elusiveautoshine for any detailing inquiries or questions online, and we'll see you guys out there. Enjoy the drive. Peace.